es Teresita Blanco, dear sister, and we're reading Saturnastra Melina. This is chapter 30, The Covenant. Melina's surprise visit was despite the light of the flame, literally. Sterling Guy had the Berserker station set the Pharaoh Dragon forest on fire, and after burning through a good portion of the forest, Praga was torched by the adult Pharaoh Dragons, who were angry that they had tortured nesting ground. In less than an hour, Praga was no more, and when the fire dissipated, no one could have guessed there were any survivors. After searching the wreckage of the central manor, the sound of voices were heard, and several dozen humans, mostly women and children, were secured in the library. Among the survivors was Iago, the puppet figurehead of Prague, and he described in vivid detail the Pharaoh Dragon attack, and the voices and the screaming, and then there was utter darkness. And he dreamed of a sea of stars and a rainbow sun and the crashing of the ocean waves, and when he came to, he was standing within the library, the only part of his home that did not burn down. Other survivors described similar visions, and no one could quite understand how or why they had been spared. And those astounding occurrences were naturally attributed to God's intervention, and some believed that they had indeed been saved by Heat, the goddess of darkness. Others attributed the miracle to Anu, the god of the stars. And with the Berserker's presence removed from Prague, the citizens regained some sort of normalcy, and they were rid of sheer part of their supplies and even started helping with reconstruction. And Augustus naturally opposed sharing what resources with people who supported the establishment. Melina insisted that the guerrilla not live until Prague was self-sustaining, and even she insisted on leaving half their force to ward off looters and bandits, and overall Melina's party stayed in Prague till the last months of the summer, and by then the summer harvest had been planted and the citizens had more than enough grain to survive till spring. And Augustus was one day asked Melina why they had held the people in Praga. And he had come to see Melina at the campfire, and the sky was a dull gray, and Melina had a baby Pharaoh dragon sleeping on her lap. And Augustus asked his question plainly, why are we wasting our time here, and we should be riding back to Sassari and preparing for our next assault? Helping people is not a waste of time, my dear Augustus, said Melina sternly. They do not deserve it, they are traitors, why are we helping them, repeated Augustus. I am helping them because I want to, said Melina plainly. And unlike you, and my dear Queen Lucrezia, I do not ponder on matters of honor and justice, nor do I punish the child for the sins of their parents. You should show some sympathy towards the people of Praga, considering that you are your father's daughter. Do not speak of my father, said Augustus in anger. An orphan like you knows not of matters of blood and kinship, and you are not bound to the same laws of nature that govern human behavior as well, and I will hear no more. Augustus left Melina's campfire in a fury, and Gaius, who was coming over to see Melina, heard her whisper below her breath, I am more human than you possibly imagine, my dear Agustina. The next day, Melina and a small party of 20 rode towards Sassari, and all the while Augustus fumed about Melina leaving the bulk of her guerrilla back in Prague. Gaius guessed that Melina probably hoped to continue the manufacture of her exotic weapons and armor, and as of now the main production line took place in Prague, and other operations have been halted in other parts of the kingdom, and as of now only the armors and shields were still being produced, and the new weapons had gotten quite bizarre, and they mostly consisted of a slab of wood with sharp scales attached to it in the form of a blade. And the scaled sword was actually rather sharp, and other metal items, including the currency, had been melted down to form spears. And 2 years ago, Melina had started a campaign to replace Sassari's metal currency for paper, and the new currency was quickly being adopted by the southern kingdom, and plenty of metal works of art and statues too were melted. And even Lucrezia reluctantly gave up her jewelry, and she was only consoled by the fact that she could still wear her pearls. And as the promised date drew closer, other feudals all over the kingdom started using a new currency, and abandoning the coin with Bersame's profile became a sign of protest against the old order. And it also started to affect Berganu's economy, and merchants from the capital had to convert their coins at exaggerated rates when dealing with the merchants of Sassari in the southern kingdom. And as a result of these many other changes, the castle grounds in Sassari had lost some of their splendors, and the change had been most brutal in the Danes' pavilion, and all of the golden decorations had been stripped down, and only the marble statues to remain, and the bronze and metal warriors had been melted down as well. And as soon as Melina arrived, she visited Franny, and she was amusing herself by playing craps with Mia and Baron. Baron greeted Melina by kissing her on the cheek, and at the age of 19, he was quite taller than Melina. Her head only went as high as his chest. Smiling, Melina said, "In 2 weeks, the final campaign begins." "You sound a bit nervous, Melina," said Mia. "Are you worried about dying in a brutal battle?" "Poof! I'm not worried about dying. What's going to happen next is what worries me," said Melina, sitting down by the table. "What do you think is going to happen next?" asked Franny. "The same thing that has always happened before," said Melina. "There will be a free-for-all, hundreds of wannabe rulers racing to take the empty throne, and in the middle of the chaos will be the great Veragerum, and only the once glorious capitals will be laid to waste, and all the fortunate and powered of those fools seek will be undone by their own greed." "Oh," said Franny sadly, "we won't let that happen, and even if we turn our swords to the very people we have sworn to protect," said Baron anonymously. Rolling her eyes, Melina commented, "You have been spending too much time with Sir Walter." Baron chuckled in response. And then Melina gathered her troops for a communal sacrifice to all of the gods, and each respected priest would sacrifice the entrails of a lamb to each god while invoking their favor. And the sacrifice was considered favorable if the pyre caught fire. The sacrifice was rejected if it did not burn. A good number of the rituals did not involve sacrifice, and it was also unheard of to do a ritual for other gods. However, Melina reasoned that the army needed as much divine help as they could get. "Before we start the ceremony, I must remind you that not all of the gods are on our side, and this exercise is aimed at figuring out which deity will listen to our prayers. And as it stands, it would be foolish for my men to send prayers and sacrifices to a god that refuses to listen," said Melina. 20 bonfires were made for 20 deities: Metidus, the soul giver; Arasa, the soul taker; Lara, the life giver; Heb, the blood giver; Hemi, the truth giver; Idea, the truth taker; Milia, the hate maker; and Mio, the love maker. Erua, the creator of the ocean; Genibus, the creator of trees; Hexis, the creator of metal; Heli, the creator of light; Hik, the creator of darkness; Ortisa, the creator of the earth; Kalika, the creator of the ebony fire; Kors, the creator of the earthly fire; Serag, the creator of snow and rain; and lastly Rhydon, the wind; and Anuo, the astral wind. Rhydon and Anuo did not have a respective priest for their bonfire, though everyone acknowledged their existence, and they were not treated directly since they were thought to be unconcerned with the affairs of lesser beings. And presiding over the ritual of both these gods was Fornas, and he was an elite knight from the southern kingdom, and he claimed to have the blessing of both Rhydon and Anuo. And a few people did believe this fact, considering that Fornas found his way around despite his blindness. He's a blind knight fighter, you know. The first sacrifice to be accepted was the one dedicated to Arasa and Lara, and the flames burned quickly, and the carcass was consumed in a matter of minutes. And while the smoke rose to the sky, it emerged to form a strange shape of a hooded feather serpent. And the Deus Machina said but one word: Nalini. The whole bulk of the soldiers were not expecting for anything to happen, and this bizarre manifestation was unlike the tales they had heard of Arasa and Lara. And Melina hastened by saying, "This is the current godhead of Lara and Arasa, and you're under the impression that both gods were two different deities, but alas, they are now one and the same, and lo and behold, he spoke his true name, Nalini." Time, bro?
14 minutes.
Caught in the fervor of her voice, those attending the ritual fell to their knees and prayed. Rokesia rolled her eyes while watching this display of religious devotion. And the following pyre to be belonged to the goddess Ortisa, and the entrails rose in a low flames, and when her fire dissipated, the entrails were their best for human consumption. And Mio's fire was the next to light up, followed by Idea the liar and Heb, and his sacrifice was the most disturbing. The lumber started bleeding profusely as the flames slowly shifted at its core. And the fire of Hik was bleached black, and it also did not crackle like the other flame. It was almost silent by its very nature, as the rock lumber was lighted up by a freak lightning that fell, and Narmokidli methods were not working with it, and the last god to show his favor was Anuo, and he was considered the most distant of all the deities, and in all of the mythologies he acted as an absentee disdain for Creator God, who had abandoned his imperfect creation. And his sudden interest kept finding hope for the coming battle, and like Lucretia secretly feared that the entire show was being staged by mages in the background. And after the sacrifice, the night ended with the great news that Bersamin was marching his army towards the lands of Aphelon. And this news greatly worried the residents of Sassari, since Sassari was between Verageddon and Aphelon. And much to everyone's surprise, Bersamin camped outside of Sassari for 2 days while his supply line was restocked. And he peacefully continued on his way until he reached his target destination. So like they thought that the king was there to like rip them apart, but no, he was just on the way to like rip a new one to somebody else, you know, like to go like destroy another feudal. Like Melina had predicted, Bersamin died on the month 9, day 13 of the year 1265, and there were plenty of stories and rumors revolving Bersamin's death. And Franny claimed that he died of a heat stroke on his way to Aphelon, and it wasn't the most glamorous of deaths, but it was at least known to happen. Sir Walter claimed that he had been poisoned by Melina, and Lucretia believed he had died in a duel, and he had underestimated his opponent and had paid the ultimate price. Byron said that his master had killed him. Subero, who had been in Aphelon at the time of Bersamin's arrival, said that he had been killed by a legion of demons, and Lord Sela had also ridden out there with Bersamin, and he corroborated Lucretia's story. Bersamin had fought one of his weakest generals in a duel, and had been literally sliced to ribbons. Regardless of the consequences revolving his death, Verageddon was finally without a leader. And there were plenty of political turmoil during the last 2 weeks of Verageddon, and the others were scrambling to pick a strong public figurehead for their government, and they were keenly aware of a large expedition slowly marching towards the capital, and the result to end this problem wasn't far, and in order to add more fuel to the chaos, someone had poisoned all the dragon riders 2 days before the army's arrival, and the others tried their best to keep this news on the wraps. However, one of the dragon handlers accidentally informed one of the dragons that his master was dead. And after 2 days, the dragons had already realized that there was nobody to command them, and in no time they had become most unruly. And the elders were forced to lock them within the dragon wing of the castle until further notice, and it would take some time to break those beasts back into submission. So with no dragon right of the dragon, so nobody's there to tell me what to do. I want out. But they're like locked away. The first ones to arrive at the borders of Verageddon was the Oven army, and they were marching in perfect unison. And like Melina's legion, they had a choir in the center maintaining the pacing of the battle, and their formation was an elegant diamond, with a circle at its center. And there were 2 lines of men at the center, and in the center there was the Alpha Seer and the Avatar of Nalini. And the Immortal Company was the first to test Verageddon's defenses, and the rest of the army closed the diamond in the form of a triangle and watched their peers process while chanting in a strange tongue. And process was slow since they had to take over each of the dragon towers, and passing by them was not an option since they were within range of the arrows and their ballistas. And once they were occupied, the human army advanced on the other city. And following protocol of all siege battles, the residents of those houses had been evacuated behind the original stone walls of the city. Though they were a bit cramped, they were at least safe from the onslaught for the moment, and those that still remained used the residential homes as makeshift fortresses. And it was this city battle which caused great human losses, and as Melina had predicted, Verageddon's cavalry came and flanked the humans in the city. And they were able to pass through the Elven armies which had occupied the towers with ease, and a few of the human contemporaries believed that the elves had led them through. And this belief was proven true by Franny, since she wrote all of Melina's correspondence for her, and she knew that Melina had instructed the elves not to bother with the cavalry. And their heavy armors made their arrows useless, and also the ballistas had been unusable when the berserkers sentries noticed that the elves had breached the towers. This was not true of all the ballistas, as some of the sentries were affiliated with the lords, and others were sleeper agents. And sleeper agents are one of the many innovations that Melina had brought to the spy games, and these agents lived in the prospective city and waited until it was the time to act, and so had been stationed there for more And to counter the berserker cavalry, Melina had her own mounted force, and though it fell inside, it made up for in mobility and grit, and her tiny horses were a force to be reckoned with, and they swept through the enemy cavalry in swift sweeping motion, and after an hour, Melina was able to kill more than 3,000 mounted soldiers, with her small force of 500. And Melina allowed for the rest of the cavalry to flee behind the walls, and the first day of the campaign was quite successful, and at night the Dark Elves busied themselves intercepting all communications sent out from the capital. And they will be in trouble if the second bulk of the Berserker army returned to the capital, and based on spy reports, a good number of the army had returned to the original post. The rest was still stationed in Afilan for one odd reason or another, and at the time Sir Walter's army were marching towards Afilan to neutralize this problem. And traveling with them were the dwarven blacksmiths, and Kurt the dragon milk craftsman, and Serik, and they were tasked with improving the army's gear while they raced to Afilan, and parallel to them was a small battalion of giants coupled by a stealthy merman, and together they would perform flanking maneuvers while Sir Walter's army attacked the berserkers in Afilan head-on. In order to get communications out, the elders sent out their monster legions, and since help was not coming, the elders decided to take this battle seriously. And the human army had not expected the deployment of 1,000 chimeras, and the elves had expected it, as thus they had taken over the dragon towers without damaging them, and the towers served as a good vantage point to handle those creatures. And while the humans licked their wounds, Basila's troops, along with the elves, used their phalanx formation to herd the chimeras around the towers, while the immortals shot them down with arrows. Instigating the assault was Cannon, and he was Bersame's very own male sphinx. And when his master died, it was said that he had been tamed by the Alpha Seer, and Baron disagrees since he had spoken to Cannon on a numerous occasions. And with the chimeras gone, the elves went to fetch the injured humans, and those that could be revived were resurrected from the brink of death, and the others were stored for further necromantic usages. A week passed, and the walls of Verageros still remained, and the human army did a few skirmishes to test the fortification, and after trying and failing 7 times, they decided to wait for the lords or the sleeper agents to open the walls, or for a miracle to happen. And by the end of this week, the human army and its 20 feudalors had an emergency meeting to discuss the problem. Lucrecia too attended this meeting, and the feudalors wanted Melina's input on the problem. However, Melina refused to see them. Her own close circle did come to speak on her behalf, and Augusta was the first to say, "Why do you not want to meet with the feudalors? I prefer that we maintain our autonomy, and besides, I doubt they will provide any useful ideas considering that they specialize in looting," said Melina harshly. "You do have a point," commented Bors. "Still, it would not do us well to fight among ourselves," said Gareth. "My lady is not fighting our allies, rather she is avoiding confrontation by maintaining a respectable distance," explained Franny. Melina smiled and nodded in approval. "It was a good thing that Bersame did not take his dragon rider when he marched on Apollon," said Bors. "Yes, we were able to poison most of them," said Melina. "Still, we should expect that a good number of them avoided death since they were out hunting dragons elsewhere. The good ones are usually outside the capital for most of the year anyway." "Please don't say that," said Gareth, feeling his heart sink. "There is something you must understand about the Berserker Lords. These men are ruled by power. They are not bound by false ideas of honor and duty. They see the world for what it is, without its grand illusions. If his berserkers are not returned, then they must not be loyal to their new government. Bersame may have a lot of things, but he was at least a strong leader, and the elders have a really big shoes to fill," explained Melina. "So what you're saying is that the elders are in a trial period, and the good dragon riders will not save them unless they prove themselves worthy," said Frederick. "Precisely," said Melina. "So like the replacement for Bersamer are now in a trial period, and like the dragon riders won't save them from destruction until they prove that they deserve to be saved." "Time, bro?"
4 minutes.
"Precisely," said Melina. "That doesn't sound very smart," said Franny. "Humans who deal with dragons for a long time eventually start to act like them, and this may not seem like the most logical move from a human perspective, but it does follow the correct mindset of a dragon," explained Baron. Everyone assembled took Baron's words to heart, and Melina smiled and opened her mouth to say something. She then nodded and kept her thoughts to herself. Fanny guessed that Melina was going to poke holes into Baron's exposition. In the end, Melina had apparently decided not to offend the young man's sensitivities. On a different point, said Garrett, why hasn't the immortals tried to climb over the walls? It would seem like an easy task for them considering that they are, well, immortals. I wonder, do you think that they could shoot them do you think we could shoot them across the wall using a catapult? That would save us time. Marina started laughing when she heard Garrett's stupid idea, and others too joined in the laughter as they pictured the grouchy blonde elves flying over the walls. I think rocks would be more effective in tumbling those walls, said Boris, and also we were avoiding siege weapons to try to maintain the integrity of the city. It is a bit too late to be worrying about that, Boris, said Gallus. Those beasts really did do a number on the other city. Some things cannot be helped, and as for the elves, behind the walls there is a divinity boy. The elves will be unable to use their power once they climb over the walls. They will be as mortal as you and me, so they also resurrected by the goddess's power, but as soon as they are shot over the wall, their resurrection spell stops working, so that's not going to work because they will be dead as soon as they land, or their legs will instantly break. How do we fix the problem? Asked Baron. We can't, said Melina. It is just like throwing salt on a fertile soil. Once you do so, nothing will grow there ever again. Then again, it's not impossible to remove the salt from the soil, so it would take more than 4 years to fix the problem. And Father says that divinity voice can be populated after a century or two. Ah, said Baron, disappointed. And indeed, using magic and blessings was out of the question, and the following night the sky was illuminated by the elf's bizarre feathered serpent. It sang a hissing, soothing song, which was echoed by the elves, and the night watchmen noted a strange blue glow in certain parts of the inner city. And Father believed that those lights came from Melina's bathing houses, and they were a living contradiction since they were exhibiting signs of magic despite being in a so-called divinity void. And by morning the army awoke after hearing the deafening roar of dragons, and from the castle emerged a flight of dragons, and they all dispersed in all directions. And a few did hover dangerously close to the allied camp. However, they limited themselves to frightening the soldiers' camp outside Veragenum. And Baron thought he saw 3 women riding on top of the 3 dragons, and an elegant pale white dragon was trailing after the bulk. And this was not the most promising sight of the day, but at least they weren't attacked by the dragons. Around noon, Frederick received an arrow from one of the sleeper agents, and the note simply said, 4. At dusk, Melina visited the camp of the feudal lords, and she said plainly, I come bearing bad news. The enemy has at least 4 dragons still under their control, and also the Elven army is running low on juice, so they might desert us if the situation does not improve. After saying this, Melina left as quickly as she had arrived, and the feudal lords pondered on what to do. And suddenly they had higher numbers than the Elven army. Still, they had more skill, and they were more diversified in their capabilities. Their healers were also effective. After delivering her message, Melina said to Franny, I need to speak with you alone. Certainly, my lady, said Franny, walking with Melina. And then when they were at a distance, Melina started as thus, This campaign is going down the pits. So you notice, said Franny sadly, and looking up, she said, Please do not do anything rash. There is no other choice. I am going to try a suicide mission with Basila, and if you don't hear anything from me after 3 days, tell Boris